let's understand better how to use Reducer, and to do so, let's use our previous demo and refactor it from instead using the useState, let's use the useReducer hook. And on the way, you'll see how that can help clean up the code, manage better the state, and also improve the performance of your application. Let's get started. First things first, we need to import the useReducer from React. Okay, now let's invoke our useReducer. So if you remember the React hooks, you only can call them within functional components. You can't call them outside functional components, and also you can't call them within a class component. Okay, so const, and we say the useReducer return for us an array with two properties. The first one is the current state, and the second one is a dispatch function. Okay, so the state and dispatch here, you can call them anything you want. Just make sure you understand that first property is your current state, and the second one is a function which help you change the state with whatever you want to do. So same as what we are doing in the useState. It gives us the object updated to the state, and give us a function that help us change that state. Okay, so here I'll call it, for example, to-do state or to-dos, because we know it's a list of to-dos, and this one let's call it to-dos dispatch. Okay, and useReducer, and useReducer itself also accepts two parameters. The first one is your reducer function, well, basically the function which does all the manipulation to your state and change it the way you want to do, and returns you a new state. Okay, so I'll call it to-do reducer, and the second attribute is your initial state. Okay, the initial values of your state. Now let's come and define this too. So first things first, the reducer function. And if you remember, we said the reducer function can be declared within your functional component or outside your functional component. But the best solution is to use a separate file, which we'll do later in our refactoring stage. Now let's call or declare our reducer. And by default, it accepts two parameters. The first one is your current state. Second argument is the action, which can help us to manipulate the state depending on what we need. Okay, now let's declare our initial state, and that will be an object, and we can see here we have three states. Okay, we have to-dos. I want the same thing, so the first one is to-dos will be an empty array. Then I have loading, the initial value will be for true, and then I have error, which is initial value is an empty string. Okay, now let's see what actions we need. So we need the first action, which happens when we load our data from our API. Let's remove this. So let's go here. We use a switch function. Okay, I want to say that depends on the action object dot type, and let's have our first case. Okay, and let's call our first case set to-dos. Okay, which will be our first one. And in that case, what we'll do is we will return our new state. And how the new state will be? First, we spread operate our current state. So in case there are other properties, we don't want to remove them by mistake or anything like that. Then we will have a new value of to-dos. Okay, and also the new value of loading. Okay, now how that will work? When you come here, we will use our dispatcher function. Okay, right here, and the dispatcher function will accept that action object, and we said we'll have type, and the type we said we are using is this one. Okay, and it will have another property. You can call it again anything you want. I'll call it data, and it will have response dot data. Okay, so basically what we want to do when this function dispatches, I want to do two things. I want to set up my state of to-dos, okay, and pass it the new data, and also the loading state, I wanted to set it to false. Okay, I'll remove the useState functions that we used already. I'll also remove these so we have cleaner code, let's come back here. So we said the loading state, we want to change it to false, okay, and the to-dos, we wanted to have the new value, which is action dot, if you see here what we call it, action dot data, okay, dot data. So that's our first dispatch function, okay. Now the second one we want to is when an error happened, okay. So again, I'll just copy dispatch function, and dispatch function again, I'll just for now give it only the type, which is error. And what I want to do when that dispatch function triggered with this type, I want to do two things: set the error and also set the loading to false, okay. So let's copy this one, delete all this, and let's go back up and add the new switch case scenario, okay. So case error, and we said for that one what we'll do, return again spread operate your current state to make sure you don't remove anything else by accident. So we said the loading again will be same, false, and this time not to do's but error will have, will have the new message value, okay. And then by default with dispatch is running but without any of these cases, so only these methods. I want to have a default return, which can be the current state, okay. Now if I go down here, dispatch no more using state. Now we come down here, we need to access the new load and new error, okay. So that's inside our state, so to do state dot loading, and also same thing here, to do state dot error, which are here if you remember these ones, okay. Then we go back down, our list item we are passing only to do's. Now we have to read this from actual list, to do's state dot to do's, okay. And for now we remove this one because we don't have set to do anymore. And let's run this, okay. I have something here gets added by my Visual Studio Code, which is wrong, and let's refresh, and you can see now my list is rendering just using the reducer. Now the next step we have, if you remember before we had this working, now I'm clicking but nothing is working, okay. So what we will do, we'll pass down the dispatch function. Remember before we were passing set to do's, now we'll pass the dispatch function itself, okay. And I'll just change name here so it's easy for you to know the difference. Go back to my child components and we go up here, so we don't have this anymore. I'll do this, okay. This one we're not using, I'll just remove it to clean up. So now where we're going set to do's, we're going here, okay. So now we need a new case to update the to-dos, okay. So what I will do, I'll just go first my dispatch function, and again an action object which will have a type, and we need a new type, and let's call it update to-dos, okay. And it should have also the new value. Again, call this one anything you want. I'm just calling data, and it will have my updated to-dos, okay. And I will just remove this one because I don't need this anymore. Now even if I did this and I save, I'm clicking, nothing will work because my reducer doesn't have this case scenario to handle. So I will go back to my reducer and go back here, and I'll say case, case update to do's, return again spread operate your state, and all what we are doing, we're just updating our to do's with what? Action dot data here, okay. Action dot data. Save it and let's run this again. Let's hard reload again just to make sure we get the latest. So you can see the loading came here, which means that's working. Let's click, and there we go. So our app now is working end to end and using just useReducer with less code. Okay, now let's refactor this and we use the files to hold actions and reducer for us. So I'll just go here and I'll add my reducer and my action file. You can add them anywhere depending on the structure of your project, but for sake of this demo, I'll just give them the same root as my index. So reducer.js. Okay, so that will hold my reducer, and I'll just copy this one from here and paste it there. Okay, and I will have export default to do's reducer. Okay, also I need the initial state in this project. Actually, I can just add the export right here. Export const initial state. Okay, now I have to come here and import them. So I'll say import to do's reducer from our file, and also I will import the initial state from there too. Okay, and that should make it work. Now let's create our action file to avoid all these hard-coded strings. Okay, because these hard-coded strings, if you put them everywhere, you may do some spelling mistake or anything, and then you can cause some issues. Now let's go here and add action.js, and I'll just say export const actions, and we will have 3 actions. So the first one, set to do's. Okay, second one is error, and the third one is update to do's. Okay, now I'll just copy these strings. This one was error, and then other one was updated to do's. Okay, now let's import this one in our file actions from .action. Okay, so first thing was here. I'll just go and do actions.set. I import like this, should be like this because not default export. Set to do, so now the helper is helping also. No, actions.error. Great. Now I'll just do the same thing from my reducer. If you remember, we have also here hard-coded strings. We don't want that. And I'll say here actions.set to do's, and also here actions.error, and here we will say actions.update to do's. Okay, now let's hard reload. Loading is coming, my list is coming, seems up to now fine. Then if I click here, also my click function is working. So that's how it is, easy. With the reducers, we have a cleaner components. I'll close all these tabs. Cleaner components, so no more use states everywhere. We have reducer function written in a separate file. The action also, we have a constant separate file, so it helps us to avoid strings everywhere. So stay tuned as we look at more React hooks and their functionalities, and also how they can help us with improving the performance of our application and also the readability.